And we're back. Another episode of Your Wealth and Beyond. I'm your host, Andrew Raffel. And today we've got a special guest coming all the way from beautiful island of Oahu. Lexi Godlewski, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me. I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
So today I'm excited because today we're going to talk through a lot of the listeners, the viewers, inspiring entrepreneurs. You know, they may have these dreams and visions of what they want their life to be, and they haven't followed through on it yet. So we're going to learn your story and how you've impacted not only yourself, but a lot of people in this soulful way of becoming an entrepreneur. What do we call it? A soultrepreneur?
A soultrepreneur. You got it. Yeah, that's right.
So we're going to learn a new term today, viewers and listeners. So so thanks for joining us. And it looks like it's a beautiful day there in Hawaii, as always.
Yes, it's beautiful here today. Early start to the morning, so I'm excited to start my day with this interview. This is going to be great.
So you have not lived in Hawaii your entire life, right?
Correct.
Up until just a few years ago, were Midwest, or what part of the country were you prior to making this big shift?
East Coast, born and raised a New Yorker, which is much different than the vibe out here in Hawaii. So I definitely have the hustle mentality in my blood. But even before moving out here, I'd never been out here before. I didn't know anyone. And that was something, we'll get into it when we talk about my full story, but that was something that really was a gut instinct and a gut calling, and I decided to act on it. And now I've been out here for 3.5 years and love it. It's been amazing.
And what is what gets you up in the morning, like for the viewers, before we get into the story and what you do on a day-to-day to help your clients? I mean, what's your passion? Like what gets you going? What gets you excited as we're ending 24, as we look into 25? Like, what is getting you out of bed?
Yeah, great question. My passion is really impact, transformation, and purpose. Those three things. I have transformed my entire life, my entire business. And I have, now that I'm on the other side of a lot of those transformations, and I see that there was so much more that was possible for me than I even could imagine for myself back then. I'm really driven to now help other people do the same with their own lives and their own businesses so that they can see what else is possible for them as well.
And so how do we do that? You know, it didn't just happen overnight for you. It wasn't just one day you woke up and you're like, I'm going to transform my entire life, leave corporate world, leave the steady job, leave the path that I thought myself or everybody says I should be on. How do we start thinking about that and turning our dreams into reality?
Great question. So this definitely did not happen overnight. It was an accumulation of many small things that really woke me up to say, okay, I'm going to change my life because I don't like this version of me right now. I know that there's got to be more to life. There's got to be more out there for me. There's got to be ways that I can use my gifts to make a bigger impact on the world. And so slowly but surely each day, it really starts with just the decision. And that sounds so small, but it's so true of like when you make a decision and you cut out all other options and you decide, I want to change this aspect of my life, or I want to change this or change that. And you really show up every day and make that new choice and start to align with that version of you that you want to be, and start something I tell my clients all the time is practice being the person that you want to become. And when you show up every day and you practice being that highest level version of you, you can call it your best self, you can call it your favorite self, whoever it is, when you really show up every day and make the decision to show up as that person, naturally you're going to start to change the way you think, change the way you speak to yourself, change the habits you have every day, change the way that you show up to a room, change just your daily energy that you're in. And the more that you start to do that, the more you watch as your life and business really does transform before your eyes. But it's not a overnight thing. That's a slow burn of every single day. You got to wake up and make that choice to practice being that version of you that you want to become. And the more you make that choice, the more you see it happen right before your very eyes.
So that's awesome. And I know you practice what you preach. So let's learn a little bit about how you transformed yourself from what you were doing to now where you are and following in what you believe is your true purpose here in this world.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, born and raised in small town upstate New York. And all my life, I really followed the path that I thought I was supposed to take. So I went to school, got good grades, did all the extracurriculars, did all the things, went to college. And when I was a senior in college, I actually started this little passion driven side hustle between classes and work. I started coaching friends and consulting startups on their marketing from the college dining hall. So I literally, this was just a passion of mine. I enjoyed doing it. I didn't think much of it. I graduated, I went to school for business marketing. So I got a full-time marketing job in New York and was doing very well in it. As a 22, 23-year-old, I was getting promoted. I was getting pay raises. I was hiring team members to work on my team with me. I was climbing the corporate ladder and I had really made it. This is what I worked so hard for throughout school. And I was doing it. On the outside, I had all of this external success and it looked like I was crushing it. On the inside, nobody knew, but I hated my life. I would not show the emotions at all, but every day I hated and I dreaded getting out of bed and going to work. I hated what I was doing for work. I felt that there had to be more to life than just this unfulfilling job. And I would then started getting anxiety attacks on the daily, felt really depressed, and just started to question, like, is this just the next 40 years of my life? Is I just go to a job that's unfulfilling, get the paycheck, climb the corporate ladder, and then that's adulthood? Is that it? And I knew that there had to be more to that. There was something that was in me and calling me saying, there's got to be more to life than this. And then, so I started thinking about, my dream has always been to be an entrepreneur. And so I started having that thought of, do I leave this to start my own business? Is that crazy? What do I do about that? And one Wednesday that seemed just like any other, I woke up and I had this gut instinct that something was going to happen that day. And I was thinking, okay, maybe that today's the day where I'm just going to put in my 2-week notice or something. But I was so fed up with my life that I was like, something's going to change today. I didn't know what it was. So I go into work and I start getting ready for a promotion that we're having that day. And one of our coworkers who was helping me on that didn't show up in the morning. And so we were naturally concerned, but there were a bunch of meetings and things going on. So we said, she's probably in one of the meetings and we'll catch her in the afternoon. About 12 p.m. noon comes around and she's still not at her desk. We've tried texting her, calling her, haven't heard anything. And so now we are naturally getting concerned on where is she? Is she okay? Did some digging, ended up our social media coordinator was the best, and she ended up somehow finding her boyfriend's number on the internet and called it. And we found out that she suddenly and unexpectedly had taken her own life the night before. That changed my entire life when that happened, because at the time I was only 23 years old. And I consider myself to be someone who is very emotionally intelligent. I'm very good at reading people, picking up on people. This is someone that I worked with very closely every day. And I had no idea that she was feeling differently than how she was portraying herself day to day. And I related to that because I was showing up to work, putting this smile on my face. And no one knew deep down that I was dealing with anxiety. I was dealing with depression. I was, going through all these inner battles nobody knew. And so that really shook my world, where after that, I could no longer sit in meetings and just talk about these trivial topics while wondering how many other people around me are also feeling depressed or anxiety or just wanting more out of their life or wanting a different life that I have no idea about. And so that really rattled my world, where then 2 months after that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to follow this gut instinct that I have to go follow my dream of being an entrepreneur. And let's just see what happens when I do that. And I knew two things when I started. When I left that job and started my own business, I knew that there had to be more to life than the life I was living at the time. And two, that I can figure it out as I go. I don't need all the answers. I don't need everything to be perfect as I start. But at the time, I was 23 years old. I decided to pick up side hustles along the way to pay the bills and figure out how to build a business at the same time, and took that leap of faith and began building my own thing. And I went back to that passion-driven side hustle I was doing in my college dining hall. I started coaching entrepreneurs and consulting startups on their marketing. And the more that I began to market my business, the more that I saw how many slimy and manipulative marketers are out there in the online space. And again, I thought to myself, there has to be a better way than this. And that's really when this whole idea of being a soultpreneur was born, of how do you not only lead with that calling in your heart to become all you're born to be and do that in a way that is aligned with you, but market yourself in a way that's still authentic and strategic at the same time, so that you can actually build the business that you want, so that you can actually achieve these goals that you want, and therefore live the lifestyle that you want to live as well. So had been building that up in New York. And throughout the pandemic, I was still working on building my business and started having these epiphanies of, okay, my 20s are going by and all I'm doing is sitting in front of my computer, working 10 to 12-hour days. Again, there's got to be more to life than this. I want to experience life too. I don't want to, this is a dream of mine that I'm building this business, but there's still got to be more adventure and fun and new people and new experiences out there. And so at the time, after 2020, Hawaii was actually incentivizing remote workers and entrepreneurs to come out here. So I had hopped on that bandwagon. I had never been out here to Hawaii before. I didn't know anyone. But again, something in me, ever since I was a little girl, I knew I always wanted to live somewhere warm and by the ocean. And so I said to my family, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for this, and let me just go try it out for a year and see how it goes. And I knew I can always come back home to New York, if I go and something doesn't work out or whatever it is, I can always come back, but let me go and try this thing. And so literally I had found housing online. I sold my car. I packed 2 suitcases in a duffel bag, bought a one-way ticket. 2 weeks later, I landed in Hawaii, and it has been better than I could even imagine. That first day I landed here, I definitely had a minor anxiety attack when it really hit. I put my bags in my room and then I went to the beach, and that's when it hit me of, Lexi, what the hell did you just get yourself into? You just flew 5,000 miles away from home where you don't know anyone. This is a brand new culture, brand new environment, everything. Like, what the hell are you doing? And that day I remember telling myself, you know what? Don't even worry about getting through the full year of being out here. Just worry about getting through the day today. And we'll get through the day today. Tomorrow we'll wake up and we'll get through the day tomorrow, and just make that your one focus. And I started doing that. And the more that I did that and just really stayed in the room and continued to show up for myself and my dreams, the easier it became. And that's when I started to make new friends, go on new adventures, and life just really showed me what was actually possible when you lead with that soul calling first. So now we've been out here for over 3.5 years. I still keep telling my parents every year, I'm not coming home, not coming home yet. And it's been an incredible journey. So really have transformed my life in pretty much every single area, which has been really cool to look back over the past 7 years and really see that.
And as you started building your network in Hawaii, was there different groups you were part of, the entrepreneur type groups or business owners? How did you get instilled into the community to make you have that feeling that this is a place that I can call home?
Great question. Yeah. One of the things I love about Hawaii is that it's so community and family oriented. So it is a small island where everybody knows everybody. So right from the start, when I landed here, for the first 6 months that I was out here, said yes to pretty much every invitation that came my way. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I would say yes to this invite to go to this event. I would go with that friend and then meet their friends who would then be going on a beach cleanup on Saturday and ask me if I want to go. And I'd say yes. And I'd meet their friends. And so naturally you would just get connected through doing that. And then naturally too, the entrepreneurs out here do find each other very easily. Because, we are the hustlers. We're the ones that live in paradise, but still have these dreams to build a business, when it's very easy to just become a beach bum or go surf every day, or, just spend your time going on hikes and that type of thing. So naturally just saying yes. And then through doing that, slowly finding my people and really building just good relationships with them, and good friendships and relationships with them has been huge.
Yeah, and as you were talking earlier on building and helping your clients build on the vision, mission, and purpose,
yeah.
Well, you were practicing what you preach, which probably made it easier too for you to have that authentic self to be out there to then bring your avatar clients to find you, not in Hawaii, but I imagine all over the U.S. and maybe globally.
Yeah.
So that probably made it easier for you to build your story into the passion and then the business that you chose to build.
Definitely. I love using my social media, as well as I have a podcast myself, and I love using that as a way to document the journey. when it comes to marketing, that's one of the tips that I give my clients all the time is instead of feeling like you need to go sit down and create content, how can you document things that you're already going through? I'm huge on storytelling, so I love taking stories of everyday adventures, or, you know, when I go out for a surf and something happens, or I go on this really extreme hike and here's the things I learned from that. Like, I love taking my everyday experiences and sharing that with my audience and with my clients and sharing with them, okay, here's the life lessons I learned from doing this, or here's the takeaways, and really just bringing them along that journey with you has been really huge, because then people see themselves, you know, in your ups and downs, and they build that deeper relationship with you because of that. So I have, from the get-go, I've taken people along this journey with me of, you know, here's how I'm building a business from scratch and transforming my life and moving across the country. And here's the things that I'm learning in case they can be beneficial for you. And that has really been awesome to see how deeply that's impacted people, you know, globally. There's people who tune into the podcast and then they'll reach out to me and say, Lexi, like, I totally resonate with this episode or what you went through here. So that's been really cool to just create that bond and those connections with people who, again, you might not know what they're going through, but then they'll reach out to you and say, you know, I'm really happy you shared that, or thanks so much, or I need to hear that today. And that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, that podcast, it's Building My Empire.
Correct.
That's correct. All right. And that'll be in the show notes as well. So the clients that you work with or potentially work with, are they, what stages are they in? Are they individuals that was like you years ago, where you knew you were unfulfilled and you didn't maybe know what the business was going to look like, and we need this push to get to this life fulfilled? Or are these struggling business owners, or they've already taken a leap of faith and now they just need some guidance to help them, you know, mentally stay focused and, you know, get the business where it needs to be?
Yeah, they're a mix where I get both people who are starting from the beginning of, they are working their full-time job and either trying to leave that to start their own business, or have been building up their side hustle at the same time and are really just getting started in this, as well as people who have been experienced in business and maybe they've seen some success, and a lot of them have seen the success without barely having to market. And now they're like, okay, Lexi, I'm trying to get to the next level and I haven't had to market, you know, can you help me with my marketing strategy to then execute that and grow that? So it's a little bit of both. But overall, I work with a lot of people who really appreciate taking that holistic approach and taking that soul first approach. So I work with a lot of people in the health and wellness industry, just in the holistic space, even in the spiritual space, that type of thing, who really want to make a big impact in the world and want to build a purpose-driven business and do it in a way that's aligned and soulful and authentic to them.
And what do you say to somebody that, you know, obviously you were able to follow your dream younger in your professional career?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they get held back because of responsibilities or certain family issues or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What do we tell them who's going to work every day and just, you know, going through the motions? But then is it just excuses, or what do I tell that person? What do you tell that person that, you know, they're not living life fulfilled, but I can't just get up and leave because I have X, Y, and Z?
Totally. That's a great question. I'm so happy you brought this up, because this is one of the things that is a little bit of a disclaimer that I like to tell people is I started at a young age for that exact reason of, I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I didn't have a house. I had more wiggle room to make more mistakes and to fail. And I purposely started early in my 20s because I wanted that. I wanted to be able to be able to own my failures and take those failures without having that overhead of and responsibility of knowing, you know, I've got kids' mouths to feed and that type of thing. However, with that, that doesn't mean that just because I made these major life changes, you know, up and quitting my job, up and moving across the country, those are really big things. And you do not have to make these major life transitions to totally transform your life. Like, you can if that's what you're being called to do, but you don't have to. And so a lot of the clients that I work with who do have, you know, or maybe later in life, or do have the kids and the house and the marriage and all the things, a lot of times their soul calling will be things like, I just want to start the podcast. And they'll be holding themselves back from that. And we'll work through that of like, okay, let's fulfill that dream of starting the podcast. And that doesn't mean you have to quit your job or move across the country or, you know, sell everything. Like, let's just work on that today. So reminding yourself that it doesn't need to be this major life change. You can start by asking yourself, and one of the things that I started with, which I'm so happy that I did when I first started to transform my life, is for the very first time in my life, I asked myself, what do I really want? Not what do others want for me? Not what do I think I should want? Not what was I taught I should want? What is it that I actually want for my life? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? And I got really dialed in on my vision and what I want for my life and what's meaningful to me. And then I asked myself, why do I want it? Why do I want to turn these dreams into reality? And so even just starting with that question in and of itself of what is it that you actually want? Not what do you think you should want, not what have other people told you should want, not what do your parents want for you. What is it that you actually want? And by getting really clear on that first, that can help you then navigate, okay, what next steps do I need to take in order to turn that into a reality? And that doesn't mean you got to up and quit your job or move across the country, but it might be something small like, Lexi, I've always dreamed of learning how to play guitar. Cool. How do we start to look up where there's guitar lessons near you? How do we look up, if you don't have a guitar yet, how can we get one in your hands? How can we start watching YouTube videos? How can we start small on that dream? So figuring out what your dream is and then understanding like, how can we just start to take little baby steps towards that? And that doesn't mean you have to make these massive life changes in order to fulfill that dream. It might, but doesn't always mean you have to.
Yeah. And so when you're working with your clients, I assume that's got to be in the beginning, you're asking them to get dialed in and you're helping them formulate that vision, writing it down. And then you made that great point of why do we want it? Because that just helps you dig in even deeper. And then do you act a lot of as an accountability coach to them? It's like, okay, well, we've got these little baby steps we want to take. Like, did you guitar lessons, right? We're starting small here, but like, how do you hold them accountable to themselves? Because we all feel like need that, and that's where a coach or a mentor, and over the years I've had them that have guided me through. Is that what a lot of you are doing too? Is that emotional and also but just pushing them?
Yeah. So on even just one strategy session with a client, I tell them they're going to get me wearing one of three hats. I'm either going to be the marketing strategist, the business consultant, or the transformational coach. So you're either going to get strategist, consultant, or coach out of me. And from that, when in the soultpreneur world, we always start with that soul piece first. So we're looking at, before we dive into any marketing or business strategy, we're looking at what is that vision that you have for your life and business? Why do you want it? And what has been getting in the way up until now? What are those limiting beliefs? What are those fears? What are those doubts? What are those old stories? What's that extra baggage? Because I could sit down and give you a marketing strategy right now. Or I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday who does want to start a podcast. And I said to her, I could sit down and give you a marketing strategy on how we can promote the podcast. But if you've got a story in your head that's holding you back from even sitting down and recording the first episode, you're not going to execute on the strategy because you won't even get yourself to sit down and record the first episode. So let's look at that first. Let's work through that. Let's transform that, get you start recording, and then we can look at how are we going to market this and get it out into the world. So really looking at that soul piece first, and then going into the entrepreneur side of things, which is the strategy, the actually doing it, the goal setting, the achieving it. So the accountability comes in throughout the entire journey and entire experience. But really, I serve as the vision holder, as well as the accountability coach, as well as the strategist and the consultant, because so many of us have these big dreams, but so many of those dreams will die out of fear or out of, we even just go tell people that we think are going to be supportive and they're not. And then we start to question ourselves of who am I to go do this thing? When I had this calling to move from New York to Hawaii, I felt it very clearly in my heart and soul of this would be so fun. This is going to be a new adventure. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to go experience this new culture and this new lifestyle. But the more that I started to tell people, and I was nervous to tell people too, because being from a small town in New York, that's just like not something you do. Like people just, stay in the small town. There's nothing wrong with that. But people started telling me, you know what, you're crazy. Why would you move to one of the most expensive places in the US? Why would you move 5,000 miles away from home, from your family and your friends? Like they just didn't get it and they just didn't understand it. And a lot of times, a lot of our dreams die because we have this calling within us. Then we start to go tell the people that we think are going to be supportive, or we think other people are going to be excited for us too, and they just don't get it. And we start to doubt ourselves and have that fear come up. So I also serve as the vision holder for my clients of, I truly believe that if that calling's in you, it's possible. Now let's go find a game plan and have that accountability to actually help you see it through and bring it to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah, and tuning out the noise. And that was one of the questions I was just going to ask is there a
Yeah.
recurring theme besides like what we talked about of having the responsibilities, this and that, take that off the table, but the recurring theme, what is it that holds people back? And it's exactly probably as you stated, for you, small town, they're probably hoping in their mind because they're afraid to do it that you're going to fail because then it'll
Yeah.
make them feel better about that position. But, not letting the naysayers. And you look at most entrepreneurs, very successful visionaries, they've always, a lot of times had ideas that people thought were crazy and crazy and crazy, and they just kept pushing through because they knew, and not that they're trying to one up the people that are turning them down, but they use it also as an incentive, probably too, some motivation.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what other reoccurring themes do you see when you're working with your clients that holds them back
Oh my
from
gosh.
following
So
their
much of it is their own selves are holding them back, is so much of it, which is exciting to me because I know we can change that. That's a circumstance and that's something that we can work on. That's something that we can change. But so much of it really is the fear of just, what if I go for this and I fail? What if I go for this and I embarrass myself? What if I go for this and it doesn't work out? What if I go for this and I lose this or I lose that? And it's really that fear is the biggest thing that's holding them back. And one of the things that I always remind them is that your mind is built to keep you safe and to keep you alive. It's not built to keep you happy. So your mind is actually doing its job when it puts you in fear because it knows in the past I've done X, Y, and Z and it's worked and I've stayed alive and we've been safe and we've been good. So your mind is trying to just keep you alive and it's trying to keep you safe in that old conditioning and what it knows has worked in the past, where your soul is trying to show you what's really possible. And it's trying to show you how good life can get. And it's trying to show you the person that you can become and the impact that you can make and the things that you can really do and be and have. But your mind, because it's trying to keep you safe, is like, no, 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 we don't want to do that because we've never done that in the past. And what if this happens? What if that happens? So your mind can always see what you're losing or what you're walking away from. It can't yet see what you're going to gain. And somehow your soul knows what you're going to gain. So when I was leaving New York to come to Hawaii, my mind could see all the things I was losing. I was walking away from family. I was walking away from the environment that I was comfortable in, that I was used to. I was walking away from this, from that, the other thing. And it couldn't yet see that I was going to gain this whole new group of friends and deep, like, our friends become our family out here in Hawaii because so many people do move from the mainland out here. So it couldn't see that. It couldn't see all the adventures yet that I was going to go on. It couldn't see that I was going to give a TEDx talk. It couldn't see this or that or the other thing, but my soul knew. And so really starting to tune in and become aware of which voice is running the show. Is it the voice of your head? And is it the fear and the doubt? Or is it the voice of that deeper calling, that gut instinct, that gut calling? And leaning a little bit more into your instincts, into your intuition to see, when I lean into that, what does happen? What is that end result? And I have found that the more that I lean into that, the more that I trust that, the more life has shown me how good it can really get. And my life now has become even better than my mind imagined back when I was living in New York or back when I was in that corporate job. And that is a result of trusting and listening to my soul and not letting that fear get in the way. And again, that comes back to what we were saying in the beginning of this conversation of making the choice in the moment of, am I going to give into the fear or am I going to take that next step forward? And that is a conscious choice of no matter what level you reach, there's always going to be new fears unlocked and new doubts that you have or anything. And so it's making that conscious choice of like, I hear the fear, I see the fear, but I'm not going to let it stop me from taking that next step or doing that thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure you instilled that in yourself as you're preparing for that TEDx talk that you gave on, living a life unfulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we get, how can somebody how do you get to that TEDx situation? I know it was at one of those Endicott, maybe was that Endicott College?
Yeah, it was at Endicott College, which is where I went to school. So it was really cool to be able to give a TEDx talk there because it kind of brought this story arc full circle since I started this passion-driven side hustle from the college dining hall and then led with my soul, and it brought me here and it brought me there, and I learned this and I learned that. So to be able to come back almost home in a sense to give that TEDx talk was really meaningful to me. But it's funny because that's something that 7 years ago, like I said, when I first asked myself, what do I really want? a TEDx talk was one of those things that I wrote in those journal entries and I put on that vision board. And so it's always been something that I knew I wanted to do. Again, I didn't think it would come this quickly in my career, but when the opportunity presented itself last year, I applied, and there were, I think, 50 to 70 potential speakers that applied for 10 speaker spots. And ended up having I found this out afterwards, that my application went through 3 different rounds of revision. I ended up scoring one of those 10 speaker spots. And then from there, I found out late January. And from there, I had only 10 weeks to learn how to write, refine, practice, memorize, travel 5,000 miles, and then go and present a TEDx talk. So that was a whirlwind of a time in my life to do all of that. But to your point, it's all about how to live life fully by leading with that soul piece first. And it brings people through my story, a few of my client stories, and it even shows how, only 21% of people listen to their heart when making decision. Yet leaders such as Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, and Albert Einstein all attributed their success to leading with their intuition. And it's so fascinating to me that these leaders who have greatly impacted our world contribute so much of their success to leading with their intuition, yet only 21% of us use that as a decision factor in making our life decisions. So that was a whirlwind, but really just, again, holding the vision of knowing that that was a possibility, kind of letting go of the timeline of when that's going to happen. And then when the opportunity presented itself, being all in on, doing what I can to make it happen and trusting the journey along the way.
And you hadn't up until that point had a lot of public speaking experience?
I was a weird one in school where I always preferred to do a presentation and speak in front of the class versus write an essay. Like, that's something that always from a young age, I was like, give me a presentation anytime, happy to stand in front of the class and present it, then sit down and write a paper. And because of that, that influenced a lot of different things. Like when I was graduating high school, my school, instead of asking the what's it called? The person who had the highest GPA.
Valedictorian?
Yeah. Instead of asking the valedictorian to give the graduation speech, they actually had a competition where you could compete to give that speech. So I entered and I actually won that. So I was able to give, the speech at my high school graduation. So that gave me a little bit of experience in front of speaking in front of thousands. And then when I was in high school, or when I was in college, I got another opportunity to speak and share more of my story. So I had these little moments throughout my career that I was able to practice that. In college, I worked as a campus tour guide, which definitely honed in my speaking skills because it taught me how to speak confidently in front of a crowd, how to even improv when you're on this tour with people, how to just make conversation, that type of thing. So that helped as well. So slowly over the years, I've always just kind of leaned into the fact that I've loved public speaking and I've loved storytelling, and have just mentally in my mind, again, held the vision of, I know one day I'm going to be on stages. I know one day I'm going to give a TEDx talk. So let me prepare for that, and really holding that dream, holding that vision. And then it became a reality.
Yeah, and you did a great job. I watched it this morning.
Thank you.
What do you remember? Were you listening to any song that got you motivated before you're about to go up? Like what song was that?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that. So 2 weeks before it was officially TED Talk Day, I was practicing that about 7 times a day because I had no notes on me. I had no presentation in the background. I had no teleprompter. Like, that whole TEDx talk was memorized. And because of that, I wanted to make sure I knew it like the back of my hand. So by the time the day came to give the TEDx talk, I was fine with that. I knew it. I was running it in my mind so many times, but I actually created a playlist that is just filled with songs that, what was running through my mind is that if I'm giving a TEDx talk about the power of leading with your soul, then I want it to be presented in a soulful way. I want to present it with soul. I want to have that on stage. I don't want it to sound like I've rehearsed this hundreds of times. I want this to feel soulful. And so I actually create a playlist of all different songs where the artists are singing with soul, or they're very passionate about it, and that passion's in there. literally the morning of, I went and I played that playlist and I went and ran on a treadmill in the gym and literally got out all of my nerves, any of the fears, anything that was in me. I literally ran it out on the treadmill so that when it was time to actually present my TEDx talk, I was cool as a cucumber. I was like, I know my talk. I got all my nerves out already. Let's rock and roll this. And I feel like I did that on stage. And then it's funny that you asked about that because I was actually listening to that playlist again this morning of just a whole variety of songs that kind of have that passion, that soul in them.
Yeah, you wanted to get so excited for today's
That's
recording.
right. Of course. You know.
Well, that's awesome, and and that's also great teaching for your clients as well of what you can do to, whether it's a TEDx talk or you're giving the big you're speaking in front of these decision makers or whatever it may be. It's like find your lane of what can keep you calm and get you focused on what you need to do and the vision of knowing you're going to be successful. But sometimes music and working out can play a huge role in that.
Yeah. And one of the public speaking tips that I feel like your listeners might like too, that I tell all my clients is when I'm speaking on a stage, whether that is 2 people in the audience or 2,000 people in the audience, I approach it the same way. I come from a place of speaking as if I'm only speaking to one person, because that helps me get to that soulful place of if I'm just speaking like this to you, I'm going to talk differently versus in my mind. If I have it in my mind that I'm speaking to 2,000 people, then I might feel like I need to change the way I speak or have my, customer service voice or that type of thing. So when I'm on stage, I put myself into the mindset of I'm only speaking to one person. I'm speaking to that one person, 100 times if there's 100 people in the audience. And so that really helps me get to that soulful, authentic place when I'm on stage, when I am speaking and presenting, instead of freaking out that there are X amount of people in the audience. And even when I record a podcast episode, I think about, okay, I'm only speaking to one person. That might be one person X amount of times, but it really helps me speak and present from that really authentic place versus a place that feels inauthentic or whatever.
Yeah, much better advice than what I got years ago. Just imagine everybody didn't have their clothes on. So
yeah,
much better to do it that way. So since we've, one of your background and expertise is in marketing, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but, as you're helping your clients, find their vision and their fulfillment and the soulfulness, but there's still we got to get clients. We got to focus on
we got to
building out
take
our
action.
message.
Yeah.
What are 1 or 2 things that you would want to share to the listeners that doesn't matter what industry or business it is, but what are some of those things that you have found successful in regards to building a brand or messaging or trying to reach the client that you're trying to serve?
Yeah, great question. A variety of things. And there's a variety of ways that you can really start to market with that soulful piece while still being strategic at the same time. One of the biggest things is when you go into the marketplace, what you'll find is that majority of people are asking, how can I get? How can I get more clients? How can I get more money? How can I get more followers? How can I get this? How can I get that? And as soultpreneurs, we flip that on its head to say, how can I give? Of course, we're still focused on the goal. If we're trying to get X amount of clients or grow our social media pages by X amount, whatever it is, we're still focused on the goal. But instead of just taking that approach of trying to get from other people, we show up from a place of service of saying, okay, how can I give more value on my social media pages? How can I give more in this sales call to this potential client? How can I give more, in this area or that area? And when you tap into that, you tap into a whole new bucket of resources that you might not have thought of before of, let's start this series on social media. Let me reach out to this person, see if I can help in this way. And by showing up from that place of service first. And one of the other things I always say is serve before you sell. And really showing up from that place of how can I give? How can I add value? How can I just help this person on the other end who is facing this problem? I have found that it has made my sales so easy, where now when I hop on sales calls with people, the person on the other end typically is like, how do I work with you, Lexi? Or I've had someone, a client now who, when I was on the phone with them, they said, Lexi, I've had so many coaches throughout my career come up to me and pitch me on why I should work with them. And he goes, for the first time ever, I'm actually going to pitch you on why I think you should have me as a client. And it's made the sales process of this business so much easier because I'm just coming from a place of, hey, how can I help? How can I serve? How can I give? And then the people who resonate with that are the ones who are self-selecting themselves, raising their hands and saying, how can I work with you? Because it's authentic and it's actually helping them versus trying to just get something out of them or manipulate them or whatever it is. So how can I give? Showing up from a place of service before you sell, and also not being afraid to, if you are growing a brand where you're the face of it or a personal brand, or you can even think about this if you're not the face of your brand, but not being afraid to bring in your own authenticity and bringing your full self to the mix is huge as well. I think there's a lot of people who that I work with who think, oh, I need to show up in this specific way, or this is how someone else has done this, so I need to do it in that same way because I know that's what's worked. And I tell all my clients right from the get-go, like, let's rip up the rule book of what you've seen work in the past or what you think, how you think you have to show up. And I want to get to the core of who are you and how do you want to help your clients, your customers? How do you want to show up for them? And what makes you unique? What makes you you? And let's bring that into the mix of your marketing. Let's bring that into your brand. You know, let's bring that into how you show up online, because it's that uniqueness that is what's going to cause your followers and your audience, your community, your clients to resonate with you, how you uniquely do things or your unique experience. So let's bring that into the mix instead of shying away from it. You know, let's have your authenticity shine and let you be, again, the best or highest favorite version of yourself. Let's bring that to the mix because people are going to resonate with that versus feeling like you need to show up as a cookie cutter version of yourself.
Yeah, that's great words of wisdom there, especially in the cluttered landscape with social media and emails that you're getting and now text messages. And so, you know, it's back to that storytelling, that authentic self, which you can't, you know, if you are really digging in deep and being authentic, you can't hide from it and people will see it.
Yeah. And especially this world that we are entering and just going to continue to dive deeper in of AI, you know, we're seeing it happen right before our eyes of there's a lot of stuff that people don't know if it's real or if it's fake. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you are going to need to build a deep relationship with your audience so that they trust you and so that they not only know and like and trust you, but like deeply trust you. And so the more that you can show up and be authentic and be real and be yourself, the easier it'll be to build that trust with them so that they're willing to then, you know, hand you money and pay you for your service, your product, or whatever it is. Like, they need that trust factor. And if they don't have that because they don't know if something's AI or if something's you, that's going to be harder to do. So the more that you can build that relationship with your audience now and bring that authenticity to the table, the more it's just going to continue to help you down the line.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, it's scary what's happening out there, and the deep fakes, and hopefully there'll be some way that we'll be able to identify what's real, what isn't. And I'm sure that it'll be a cat and mouse game of that.
Yeah.
Definitely scary. Definitely scary stuff. Is there any books that you always recommend your clients read, or is it based off of a specific situation where they are in their milestones or where they are in their journey?
Yeah, I have so many, you know, like most entrepreneurs, I love to read and I love to grow. So I have so many book recommendations. I would say that my top 3 are, when I was first starting out, the very first like personal growth book I read was You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. And I love that one. So if you're just getting started on your transformational journey or your personal growth journey, highly recommend that one. Another one that I love is I Am by Howard Falco. And that one really starts to change the way that you just see yourself. And you start to see that the words that come after the words I am are very important, because your mind is going to eat whatever you feed it. So if you keep telling yourself, you know, I'm stupid, I'm not enough, I'm not capable of this, whatever it is, your mind's going to believe it. So the more that you can start to change those stories and change the way you speak to yourself will also change your mindset, your outlook, the opportunities that come your way, everything like that. So that's another book recommendation. And then my third is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that one I love that one for the history, because most people know that Napoleon Hill, because of Think and Grow Rich. But in the 30s, Napoleon Hill actually wrote the transcript for this book, Outwitting the Devil. But his wife was so nervous at the time for him to release this information to the public, because she was afraid that people were going to come after them, that she made him promise to not release it until after she died. So the transcript really got passed down throughout the family, and it didn't get published until like the 2010s. And you read this book and it's crazy because it was written in the 30s, yet it's so relevant today. And he pretty much frames the devil as those fears and the doubts in your mind that stop you from going for your dreams. So it's that, just the history of knowing he wrote that in the 30s, yet it's still so relevant today, is something that I love. So that's a book recommendation I always have for people too.
Awesome. That, all three will be in the show notes. So thank you on that. You know, as we wind down today, any last tips that we can give the listeners and the viewers that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I think that transforming your life is not always going to feel easy or feel comfortable. That whole first year of business, I remember waking up just and having this just like uncomfortable feeling and these fears and these doubts of what did I get myself into? And now looking back, I realized that those were growing pains, and that just as your body hurts when you're growing as a teenager, like you'll feel those internal growing pains as you're growing as a person, transforming your life as well. But if there's anything that I could tell, you know, even that younger version of myself that was going for it, is number one, truly do trust those callings and those dreams that you have. Trust your gut, trust those instincts that you have, because they're in you for a reason. And your dreams are your dreams uniquely. They're not everyone else's dreams. So when you start to tell people about your dreams and they're not on the same wavelength, or they don't understand, or they start to doubt them, just let them, because they're not their dreams. They're your dreams. So continue to trust that the dreams that you imagine are real. It's possible. That the words that you speak to yourself are important, and you spend a lot of time by yourself, not only in general, but especially as an entrepreneur. And you have to be your own number one fan because of that. And you have to be on your own team because of that. So the more that you can start to work on transforming that mindset and transforming those stories now, so that you do show up in full belief of yourself and you do show up as your own number one fan and on your own team versus beating yourself up, is going to make a really big difference. And then there's so much more than you think is possible for yourself. Like, we have so much more potential than we lean into on a daily basis. So trusting that and just starting to experiment with that, even if it's just, you know, pushing yourself even just 1% more every day in whatever area of your life it is, and start to really test that and see what are you truly capable of when you set your mind to something that's bigger than you've done before, or something that's outside of your comfort zone, and just starting to play with that and see what really happens when you do lead with the soul piece first versus just letting the fears and doubts hold you back.
Beautifully. Well said.
Thank
You got me excited now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, let's go. Tell the team out there, we're ready to rock and roll. Awesome. So I think we hit on just the tip of the iceberg of what you do and how you nurture and help your clients and even shape your own path. I'm sure you've started looking at what's my next vision going to be. And, you know, we can probably have you back on the podcast in 3 or 4 years to see if it came to fruition, which I know it will. But lots of good nuggets in here today for all of us out there, whether, you know, we've got that inside dream that we know we're just afraid. We know it's right, but we're afraid. We can figure out ways to get there. And it's just sometimes small steps. It doesn't have to be where we fly, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 miles away from home, but, you know, looking at the mirror and, you know, understanding what's going to make each and every one of us happy. And then that exudes out, and you're able to build the life and potentially the business that you've always wanted, which, Lexi, you've done. So appreciate
working on it always.
Always a work, always working. But I appreciate you taking the time with our listeners and our viewers, and for myself, I got a lot out of this today. And all the inside the show notes, we'll have plenty of ways to follow you, to connect with you, to learn your words of wisdom, and hopefully we can have you help more people get on their track and watch the success that you've had all these last few years, and super excited for that. So thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I've had a blast and so happy to share everything I've learned in my story with the listeners. I hope that this was super valuable for them. And if any of you listeners took anything that had really resonated with you or hit home, don't hesitate to send me a message and let me know. I love interacting with you guys. So feel free to connect. But thanks so much for having me on the show. This was great.
It's awesome. Thanks, Lexi. Have a great rest of the year. And listeners, all the show notes will be below the video, as well as on all of the podcast platforms. Remember, life is what you want to make of it, and follow the guidance and the expertise of Lexi to help you get to where you want to be. Happy planning, everybody. We will talk to you real soon.